The Oklahoma Sooners absolutely crushed at the NFL Scouting Combine.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there tuning in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. I'm John Williams of Sooners Wire. He's Jay Smith. He's back of Unfair Sports. And on today's show, we're going to start talking spring ball. It is March, so that means it is spring ball season. We're also going to talk about what Jim Nagy had to say about roster building, but we're going to start here because the Oklahoma Sooners absolutely were fantastic at the NFL Scouting Combine. Several players making significant impressions on the NFL draft community.
Oh, it was money day, right? This was the money day. A shout out to my guy, Robert Spears-Jennings, because he coined that for us when we were at SEC Media Days, right? We were looking at the schedule. We talked about how tough it was. He was like, oh, those are money games, because that's what the games that the NFL scouts are going to be at. People are going to be looking at us at those games, mainly because they're going to be big national spectacles, and the team showed up. And yeah, here we go. So with that being said, Robert Spears-Jennings, on top of a few other players, made some money. So I know you talked about it on Friday. Grayson Halton went out there and cooked. He looked like the player that we saw on the field. He looked explosive. He was fast for his size, his ability to move. He was getting it. 3-cone drill. I mean, the three drill or whatever. I was like, oh wow, that was a lot more impressive than I thought. Big boy can move. And so the Sooners basically walked in there and said, yep, money. We're about to get paid. And here we are. We're at the point where the results in the combine is going to lead to a lot more dudes probably getting picked up higher than some of us even expected.
Yeah. In addition to that, Robert Spears-Jennings, Deion Burks run to the top 10 fastest 40-yard dash times, which no surprise for Deion Burks, but Robert Spears-Jennings, I mean, it's not a surprise that he's fast, but it definitely turned heads that he ran that fast. And, you know, he was one of a number of players that were impressive. Mason Thomas, Kendall Daniels, these guys I had people asking me questions in the DMs about Kendall Daniels. Like, what's he like? What's he about? What's the impression that Oklahoma has of him? And I mean, the national media, the NFL media is catching wind of the reality that Oklahoma's got talent now. You know, it took a few years to develop this, but it's more than just a couple guys anymore. It's a whole roster of dudes that have just been impressive, and not just on the workout front, but in the meeting rooms and the interviews at the podium. It's exciting to see, because that's just a glimpse of where this thing is headed. You know, that you're going to have talented rosters under Brent Venables that help get guys to the league, because people look at the 2026 roster and think, hey, this has a chance to be even better than the 2025 roster was.
Yeah, they got so much praise there. You start to even hear like the opposing players talking about them at their podiums, right? Players like who's a player that you went up against that you know that you felt like was good. Like Caden Proctor really hyped up Mason Thomas, right? So you start to hear about that. That's become, you know, Alabama got to see Oklahoma twice last season, and actually 3 times. Caden Proctor got to deal with him, and he got to understand. Actually, he didn't see him in Tuscaloosa, luckily, because Mason was injured at the Tennessee game, but he did see him, you know, at Norman twice, and he got to speak it up. But besides that, the speed that this defense and offense actually showed out there, right? Deion Burks made him some money. Started off with a 4.33, and he ran a 4.31. John, I'm tired just thinking about that. I'm ready to go back to sleep. That was fast. I knew he was fast, and I mentioned that because if you've never read Bruce Feldman's writing over at The Athletic, you have to. Every year he puts out a thing called the Freak List. and that freak list are just freakishly athletic college players that do wild stuff that he hears about. And on that list was 2 players that put up absurd numbers in there. Robert Spears-Jennings was number 82 on his list this past season. And we talked about it here on the show. And Deion Burks was like in the 50s. I think it was like 55 or something like that. And he talked about how both of them super fast, super strong. Burks squatting like 600 pounds or something stupid for his small frame. And it showed in his speed. 4.33, then he ran a 4.31. And Robert Spears-Jennings ran at 4.32, which I expected him around at 4.4. I thought he was going to be a 4.4 guy, maybe 4.39. 4.32 was a lot faster than I even anticipated, but I'm proud of him. Like I said, money was made. He showed his full athleticism and his full bag of capabilities at safety to where he was like, I think the first or second fastest safety on the list, because the only person he couldn't outdo was the mutant out there, Sonny Styles. And he's also, I think he was like top 5 on Bruce Feldman's freak list. So if you look at that freak list, it's a good chance you'll figure out some of these dudes in at the combine putting up just ridiculous numbers.
Yeah, it was an impressive weekend. And I think for a guy like Robert Spears-Jennings, it was really big because he's got really good tape. Also, there's games where it's, because you're going up against SEC passing games, there are times where you get beat a little bit. So going and having an impressive performance like that, showing that you've got the speed to run with NFL, wide receivers, especially over the middle of the field, that's huge. The guy's going to have a big NFL career. He's going to be somebody like Owen Heineke, many of these other defenders that are going to be able to contribute on special teams as well, because he contributed on special teams for Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had people talking about Fabechi Wiwu. He didn't participate in the 40, but people were impressed with his ability to move in the drills and impressed with his versatility. You're going to be hard pressed to find a guy with as much experience as he does that's able to play 2 different positions for you along your offensive line. And that's going to make him a draftable prospect. 4th round, would not be surprised to see Fabechi go 4th, maybe even 3rd round, as teams look to get somebody who can play 2 positions, that can play center and play it well. And he can do that. So another, good weekend for him. Anybody else that really stood out from the weekend for you?
I say the one thing with Waywoo to add to that is, and that's kind of the Bill Beatonbow special, is getting guys and training up guys on their ability to play multiple spots. And that's kind of why he's so highly regarded by so many NFL scout guys, is he's always got a dude like that that's ready to go to the pros and be able to quickly contribute. Is him. They can do that. They'll play multiple spots. And heck, the crazy thing about Fabechi, when you really look at it, he played in every game the last 2 years since he's been in Oklahoma. Every game he's been at Oklahoma, he's been on the field. But yeah, I guess the last one really is going to be Berger's dad. He went out there and did some work, man. Jaren Kanak, 4.53 at 240 something pounds. Remember, this was a 10.3 guy in track in high school, but he was like 210. You add 40 pounds, roughly 40 pounds to the guy, 30 to 40 pounds. He's running a 4.53. I think he may have got himself drafted. And teams are going to look at him and put him in like different spots. Like they may not play him fully at tight end. Like he still has some refinement and things, but they're going to probably throw him in a few spots. Heck, somebody may say, hey, you want to come back to linebacker? I would love to throw you back at linebacker. Or as you mentioned, special teams. He could be a special teams top dog, because not only is he going to give you guaranteed effort, but he's fast. Like he's blazing fast for his size.
Yeah, the team that has some creativity to them and doesn't just try to put him in the tight end box because that's the comma position that's listed next to his name, is going to get a football player. Think Taysom Hill, right? Taysom Hill, a college quarterback, converted to tight end. The Saints have created value for him because they use him at multiple spots, and they use him on special teams as well. And you can do a lot with a guy like Jaren Kanak, even if he's like an emergency 5th linebacker on your roster. You've got a dude that's got multiple years of collegiate experience at linebacker, and you've got a guy with production at tight end. You can use him as an H-back. You can use him as a big slot wide receiver if you're open-minded enough to not just use him strictly as an inline tight end. you're going to thrive with Jaren Kanak. And I really hope he lands at like San Francisco or like somebody that's from that Kyle Shanahan style coaching tree that knows how to get the fullbacks and the tight ends involved and get those bigs moving around. That would be ideal for me because I know that they're able to figure out how to use a weapon like Jaren Kanak.
Yeah.
Another guy who knows how to use weapons and to figure out how to use weapons, that's Jim Nagy. He spoke with Dari Noka last week, and we're going to break down some of what Nagy had to say about roster construction coming up here on Locked On Sooners.
College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night from early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts. Man, the Great Alaska Shootout, one of my favorite ones. There's always action on the board, and now FanDuel gives you a way to turn that energy into an even bigger potential win with college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want, rival games, ranked matchups, whatever, floats your boat, lights your candle. You can even mix some spreads and totals. Play a prop or two right there to match how you see the slate playing out. Then you apply that profit boost and instantly bump up that potential payout. Look at the odds around those, right? There's so many options you can do this for. I mean, looking at Oklahoma, looking at some of the SEC squads. There's so many things you could pick. So go safe, go bold, ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay. Your style now with more upside behind it. Head FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you had to feel still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles right in front of you. Like hopefully they fall right there. I don't know. The best way is to do that with sponsored jobs. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less searching more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. So spend less searching, less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, it's the job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs.
Once again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there tuning in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you want more Locked On Sooners with less ads, go check out the Locked On Everydayer Club program where you can get Locked On Sooners ad-free across every podcast platform for $5 a month or $50 a year. All you got to do is go to LockedOnSooners.supercast.com. Save that one for the outtakes. For $5 a month, $50 per year for ad-free audio of Locked On Sooners. All right, Jay, our general manager, Jim Nagy, spoke with Dari Noka last week about roster construction for the Oklahoma Sooners. And there were several quotes that were really, really intriguing. But let's start with this one. The biggest goal of the offseason outside of the portal was let's retain our roster. And now we're sitting here a couple months later, and it's great to be able to say we have every starter returning. That's a big deal. Off a playoff team, every possible returner is coming back. Yeah, would we have liked to bring a couple depth pieces back? For sure. It would have been great to bring them all back, but that's not realistic. These guys want to go play and have opportunities. And so guys like Kobe McKenzie, Samuel Masigo, guys that Jim Nagy mentioned, but you could also include a Jaden Hardy, they're going to go off and to find starting roles other places, which is great. We'll be rooting for those guys.
One thing that's fascinating to me right now is just how much of the face of Oklahoma Jim Nagy has become. It's actually a very intriguing thing to see that I don't feel like you see this as much from NFL GMs. Like I know NFL GMs, you talk about roster construction, they make comments here and there, but it feels like he's doing a lot more press work in comparison to most. Like I need to go see if I see Courtney Morgan doing this as well. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just very fascinating. very intriguing to see that that's kind of the direction that either Oklahoma's putting him in or he's putting himself in. But neither here nor there. I know somebody in the comments is going to say, well, he's probably trying to position himself for an NFL job. I promise you, he probably could have gotten a job this past summer if he really wanted one.
Yeah.
This past winter, right? Like, he's been known for years. And I think for him, it's more of a, it feels like, and I'm going to have to ask him this next time I see him, but it feels more like a Brent Venables type deal where it's like, I don't want just any job. I want one that actually makes sense and there's actually a path to success. So I could totally understand why he may pass on a lot of the smaller options that may have came his direction, but I digress. I love that he pointed out the thing that we talk about on here all the time, John. I have a hammer next to me somewhere. Actually, I got a few hammers behind me. You and Nora may have to come out because we've been hammering this on y'all's head. I think y'all understand. This team likes their recruits, and there's a reason. They went to the playoffs with this squad. And so for them, it's like, okay, more experience would just get us over the hump. All we need to do is get, Mateer settled down and go. Yeah. And I think that he will now in comparison to last year because we also got extra quarterbacks behind him that we can toss in there if we truly need to. The biggest thing here, though, is retention is just as expensive as acquisition because remember, tampering's happening. Folks is out there, they're finding ways to get around. Agents are making these phone calls. And so you're paying your own players to keep them around to go along with getting additional pieces here or there to help fill those holes. I love that he pointed that out because that was the most important thing is, we want these dudes back. Like I said, depth pieces you'd like to have, but those dudes know they can go start somewhere else and make way more money. I know a couple of guys that have left, and I've heard the rumor of what they've getting paid from some folks that in the media, and I'm just like, oh, wow. See why they left. It makes sense. And they're probably going to start. So if you don't have the starting opportunity, that's how you're going to end up losing. That's why your backups, and Cignetti said it very well, there's really no depth, and he's never played with the mindset of having depth. Your depth is going to be young players. They have to be young ones. Maybe players at most in their second year as a redshirt freshman, actually as a redshirt sophomore, maybe in their third year at that point. That way they've got at least 2 more years to play somewhere else. Their redshirt sophomore is probably the furthest you can hang on to them as a backup because if they're good, they could go start somewhere for 2 years and go to the league. So I love that he pointed that out because that's, like I said, this thing we've been hammering like crazy home here. That's the hardest part of figuring out rosters in college football today.
Well, in order to have longevity and long-term success, you have to have a foundation that's built from the ground up, and that comes from the recruiting ranks. It can't be portal turnover every single year. Can you have teams that show up like that here and there? Sure. But the teams that are winning national championships and contending are having portal acquisitions that are added to the foundation that they've already built and the culture they've already built. And that's why the retention part of this is so important, because the guys that are coming into this thing, Trell Harris, Parker Livingston, Marion Harris, Cole Sullivan, that are going to be big time contributors, they're additive. They're not, hey, you've got to come in here and you've got to change the dynamic of the program and change the culture and be a bar. No, you got to come in and fit in to what's already been built and what's been successful. And that's why it's so important to retain the core pieces of your roster, is so it can have that carryover year over year. You turn over your roster through the portal, and who knows what your culture is going to be like year in and year out. And so I think that's a big part of that. And then I thought the other thing that was really interesting is the way he talked about the offense. He said, we improved the run game and just really put more around John Mateer. A lot was on John last year as a first-year play in the SEC. Were we good enough around him? Obviously, they weren't. Our job here in the front office is to create more competition in every single room, competitive depth, every offseason. And I feel like we've done that. There's a lot of players that we're bringing in that are going to come in here and have significant roles right away, whether that's starters or role pieces. So we feel like we did that. We feel like the competition is better across the board in just about every room. I would say every room. Now we're just fired up to get out on the field in spring ball. The other little nugget here is they got younger. They went from an average age of 20.7 on last year's roster to 20.5, but also added 9,000 snaps in the portal.
kind of an example of what I pointed out, right? Like if you're going to have depth, they're going to be younger players, roughly redshirt freshmen, redshirt going into this coming season. They're going to be redshirt freshmen, redshirt sophomores. That's more so what you're going to expect to see going forward on this roster for the most part, unless you can get a guy to stick around. It's a rarity, but you may get someone to stick around. But that's what you're going to see. It's going to be a lot of these teams are going to be younger. But as he mentioned, he also brought in 9,000 snaps, 9,000 career snaps. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
So I saw somebody mention on the socials asking the question about why isn't Oklahoma going more in the Kurt Cignetti Indiana model of getting a whole bunch of experienced players. Kind of is what that is. Like you just added 9,000 additional career snaps for players that are going to be able to play. You can't have an entire roster of redshirt seniors. It's impossible.
It's going to be hard.
They're not going to come here and sit on the bench.
Right.
That is kind of like the logic that comes behind that. Yep. You're not going to get that to happen. Those players want to play immediately. And unless you can find one that's better than what you currently have, we're good. So I do like that he pointed that portion of it out as well. Players that played young, players that had opportunity and snaps at their previous location, and now they've come here to take over. Troy Harris is going to be, him and Parker are going to be huge, of course, the wide receiver room. You've got a lot of experience of guys that can not only play the position, but play in the flow of the game, something that you want to improve on anyway. That's a big deal. But, yeah, Jim just kind of pointed out everything that we've talked about the most about roster construction and the strategy about what makes sense. You want to build your roster based upon players that you know will play and those are up and coming that you can get early snaps to determine if they need to be playing more or if they need to go ahead and find someplace else and get a starting job. You're finding this stuff out early. It's really just, executing at a very efficient level of understanding what your roster looks like at a very early spot. Because, like you said, again, another thing we talk about here, Brent Venables rotates a lot on that defense. And that's a good thing because then you can really tell in critical moments, all right, can't trust you, going to have to pull you. Then at some point, they may end up hitting the portal.
Yeah, and I think focusing and understanding that the offense wasn't good enough last year and they had to improve. To me, that's the biggest thing. And again, talking about hammering it back is they didn't rest on what they did in 2025. They said, no, we got to be better in 2026 if we want to get back to the playoff and we want to contend for a national championship. We got to get better. And offensively, they had to get better. And they did that. They added guys like Parker Livingston. They added Trell Harris to make them better on offense. The tight ends, Lloyd Avant, the Marion Harris, they added dudes to help John Mateer and make that offense significantly better. So excited to see what that looks like. We're going to get our first glimpses of this offense during spring ball, but it's March. So we're going to start asking some spring ball questions coming up here on Locked On Sooners. And Locked On Sooners is sponsored by Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involved significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. And again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, just do that. We know you're everydayers anyway, and you're listening and you're tuning in, but just click that little subscribe button. It just helps more people find out about the show, and do it on the podcast side, do it on the YouTube side as well, just to make sure you're getting all of Locked On Sooners every single day. All right, we got spring ball coming up, Jay. The Oklahoma Sooners will finish with the winter workouts. We'll get the video that drops of the weigh-in day that they like to do. And I think that's a fun day. I always get excited for Miguel Chavis MCing the weigh-in day. It'll be interesting to see where these guys have grown over the last few months. But what's an early spring ball question that you have as things begin to ramp up?
I want to know who the healthy running back is.
Yes.
That's basically the biggest one for me. As Nagy mentioned it, we talked about this in the last segment. Make sure you go check that out. As Nagy was speaking on building a roster and what that strategy looks like, the goal was to put more help around John. You had to carry a heavy load, and the reason he had to carry a heavy load is both of his running backs spent most of the season hurt. You ended up redshirting one of the running backs, giving him an opportunity to go play somewhere else. That was a mutual agreement. And then you had another back that just did not pan out, just did not fit the system, did not do what needed to be done in order to execute. And he was also banged up. So with that, who's going to be a healthy running back? We need healthy running backs. Now, it appears that we'll have at minimum 6, if not 7, because we did bring in Benjamin McCrary as a walk-on senior, redshirt senior running back. He's the actual older brother of Michael McCrary, the 27 cornerback commit that we have. So, keeping it all in the family like I always do. Still got Gabe Salchuk back there, who thoroughly enjoys being here, obviously. But yeah, I want to see where we are at the running back room as far as health. How's X-Rob and his knee and the bang-upness he's getting, that shoulder from Torrey Blaylock. And then you got the freshman, the Evan Walker, as well as Jonathan Hatton, who I feel like may end up being one of your top backs quickly. That's the big questions. What does that room look like going in the door? And, you got a new coach. So very intrigued about that.
Yeah, I think seeing the youth and how quickly they're able to acclimate and contribute during spring ball, or at least the buzz that we hear about them, I think is going to be key. Like a guy like Jake Krell, right? Everybody's anticipating that he's going to be able to come in and be a difference maker off the edge as a true freshman. Whether he factors in on early downs, that'll be the question, because he's got to grow. The other one for me is I want to see how much Michael Fasusi has grown physically. Has he added more muscle to be more effective in the run game? Same with Ryan Foje. They were just true freshmen last year. That was just their first offseason in the strength and conditioning program. Now they get another full offseason in the winter workouts and strength and conditioning program, and not having to figure out all of life as they're doing that. They know what to expect. They know what's expected of them. Have they grown significantly? Have they added the muscle to be more effective in the run game? That's going to be key for me to watch for sure.
Yeah, definitely. 100% on that. What's one of the questions you got coming up in your brain?
Oh, yeah, dude. I think it's just a lot about the depth, because the starting lineup looks really good, right? I know we just spent a segment talking about how you're not going to have a lot of depth, but you got to have some depth, and you got to figure out where key contributors are going to step up. And so like a guy like James Nesta, how ready is he to be linebacker 3? How ready is Adepoju Adebawore ready to take over? Or Danny Okoye? What's that going to look like at defensive end? Because you're going to have 3 or 4 guys playing for you at defensive end. Who starts at right guard? I mean, there's a lot of really intriguing questions for this thing, but ultimately, like, the starting lineup for Oklahoma looks good. And yes, it's on paper. Yes, it's March the 2nd. It's a long way to go to week 1 of the 2026 season, but this thing looks good, man. It looks ready to compete once again. And I'm excited about that, but you're going to have injuries. It's a physical game. Who's going to be able to step up and supplant or take a 2 deep role that maybe we weren't anticipating? That's going to be a big question. And I think that's going to be a question on a lot of people's minds, but I'm excited to see, like, where does Caleb Nitta fit in? How does right guard play out? Who backs up Eddie Pierre-Louis? And then the linebacker situation, who's safety 3, beyond Michael Boganowski and Peyton Bowen. Again, just really intriguing depth questions across the board.
Yeah, there's a lot of good depth ones. I think
wide receiver 4, is it going to be Elijah Thomas or JaMychal Carter? Like,
the depth. The second that second person is probably the most intriguing of all of them to me as well. I totally agree with you there. You're curious to see what does that look like? I think the next question I have stays on the offensive side is who's going to take tight end number 1.
Yeah.
That is going to be a big question. Of course, it's most likely going to be situational as Rocky Beers is more of a catcher who can block, and Hayden Hansen is a blocker who can catch.
Yeah.
So you got a good mixture there. And then Van Dorselaer is a good depth component, young tight end who's ready to figure something out. Jason Witten, of course, has got himself a fun room to configure, especially with Trinae Washington still there. You still got John Locke. The old man is still around. Same thing with Cade McIntyre. So the cupboard's not bare. They added a lot of great, canned goods to go along with everything else they already had stocked in there. So there's something to work with. The question is, who can he get to refine their game quick enough to be ready to contribute day one? My expectation, of course, is Hayden Hansen's going to probably be your lead. Like you said, the run game is critical. They got to get the run game going. And having a tight end that's good at blocking always helps, especially when you have him on the outside as a second 6'8", 6'9" big man helping with, edges and stuff and linebackers. You're not getting around a big dude that's athletic enough to keep up. So tight end, I'd say running back and tight end are probably the two questions that I'm going into spring ball with the most questions about. Got more depth, of course, but I think the specific ones are really those two right now.
Yeah, and the thing is, you've got good players at those spots. It's just a matter of health for the running backs, and then how does the rotation work at tight end? And again, it's a depth thing. Defensive tackle, it's a position I failed to mention, because you feel great about Jaden Jackson and David Stone as your starters at defensive tackle, but who's next? Is it going to be Bishop Thomas? Is it going to be Kenny Ozawalu? Is it going to be Nigel Smith? Is it going to be Trent Wilson? Are we going to get Brian Harris? Is he going to step up as a true freshman and be ready to play a significant role? What does that look like? So it's intriguing, because you've got a lot of guys we think are talented and can contribute, but who's going to take the step? Who's going to be the guy that, hey, takes on a serious role and is ready to be a part of the rotation significantly, right? Because every offseason we go through this and we wonder, what's it going to look like? Now, the great thing is we have few questions about who the starting lineup should be.
It's true.
I mean, I think there's not really a question. There's
there.
maybe one position battle, and that's right guard. And that's my presumption, is that right guard is the only spot that we really have a position battle. And that's between Heath Ozida and Ryan Foje. The rest of it seems to be pretty well locked in. Now, the coaches would argue there's position battles all over the place, right? Elijah Thomas could battle with Parker Livingston for an outside wide receiver spot. But Terrell Harris, he's not coming in here to sit. He's coming in here to start and be a dynamic playmaker for you at wide receiver.
Yeah.
You added a Dakota Fields at cornerback, but he's not going to take over Eli Bowen or Cortland, Guillory's spot on the outside at cornerback. Who's the third corner? We'll see. Who's the backup, Cheetah to Reggie Powers III? That's going to be an intriguing question there as well, because Oklahoma added a bunch of fast, athletic, and physical dudes in the 2026 recruiting class that could have a say in the Cheetah battle too. That's going to be fascinating to watch how those guys show up.
It's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Depth is going to be fun, though. I'm ready to see what the two deep's going to end up looking like. Of course, we won't have an answer until past fall camp, but it's going to be a lot of good theory crafting on who could do what and be in what area and what makes sense for specific guys as we go through and get these weigh-ins and all of that. Can't wait to put together my sheet on who gained weight, especially the young pups. Whew. Another defensive line is probably getting bulked up.
That's
ready to
right.
start running through some people's faces.
Let's go. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. Go check out his channel for more Oklahoma Sooners coverage. At Unfair Sports, you can follow me at John 9 Williams and read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all of your social media platforms. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer
Sooner.